One of my favorite themes within the story of One Piece is fate, and how it shapes the story and its characters. The fate of some to tragically fall to save the lives of those they care about. The fate of mythical figures in history and how their wills still live on in the current generation. Or even the fate of everyone who watches this show to fall for Luffy's personality and tenacity. But more than that, one thing that's really stuck out to me and interested me more than anything is the will of the devil fruits themselves. It's always been intriguing to me how the fruit themselves have a will, and if eaten by somebody whose will aligns with the fruit, will actually cause the fruit to go through an awakening process. Although that does make me question, like, how is somebody supposed to awaken the Beta Beta no Mi or the Jake Jake no Mi? Like, how does your will, how does your soul resonate with snot so much that your fruit evolves? The world may never know. And so, with the concept of awakening fruits, it makes certain characters feel even more oppressive when realizing hardly any of them have actually awakened their fruit, which means their power ceiling had yet to be reached, one such character being Kaido. Kaido beat Luffy on 3 separate occasions, killed him, and even had to be fought off by several different entities just for our heroes to win. And it's later revealed to us that Kaido wasn't even fully aligned with the Azure Dragon Fruit due to his violent personality and actions clashing with the benevolence and prosperity that the Azure Dragon is supposed to bring to the world. However, we see on God Valley that Kaido happened to just steal this fruit from Big Mom as a desperate grab for more power. But right before this, Big Mom mentioned she already had plans for this fruit, and it was going to go to Katakuri instead. And after reading this, I thought to myself, with the type of man that Katakuri is, how his personality and his faith aligns, could he have awakened the Ua Ua no Mi? So today, let's take a look at both the legend of the Seiryu, compare that to Katakuri's character and beliefs, and see if Katakuri really would have been the better fit for this legendary fruit. And if you like videos like this and you want to see more One Piece content in the future, make sure to hit that like button down below for me. Make sure you are subscribed and that little bell is rung. That way you know when each and every single one of my videos comes out. And let's get back to it. Adopted by Japan in the early 7th century, the Seiryu is one of the 4 mythical guardians from Chinese constellations and mythology. It's hard to find the exact original story in which it's mentioned, but the Seiryu is a figure that has been strongly connected to prosperity and personal growth, sometimes depicted through hard work of self, and has even inspired popular icons from its stories, such as Magikarp and Gyarados from the Pokemon series. The story of a carp swimming up a river, a waterfall, and then a dragon gate, only to then turn into a dragon thanks to its hard work and perseverance. The legend of the Seiryu itself is one of grace and benevolence that tries to teach others to work together in harmony with not only themselves, but nature as well. Other associations for the Seiryu include things like wood, rain, protection, wealth, good fortune, and even the heavens themselves. Funnily enough, Kaido is essentially the antithesis to all of these concepts. The production of Kaido's smile fruit dried up all of the valuable water and killed all the wood in the area that the fruit was being raised in. Meanwhile, the presence of Kaido and his beast pirates stole things like wealth, protection, good fortune, good news, pretty much anything positive that could be was stolen by these pirates. In fact, living on Wano could be described as hell itself by many, which is obviously the opposite to the heavenly presence that the Seiryu is supposed to bring. After laying all of this out, it's very obvious to me that Kaido could never awaken the Ua Ua no Mi, as he himself embodies the opposite of every concept from the fruit itself, which, after saying out loud, really concerns me for what this character's ceiling could possibly be. With almost no similarities to the fruit itself, Kaido was able to topple entire armies, go toe-to-toe with the sun god Nika, and was able to unlock several forms of the dragon with hard work, perseverance, and alcohol. That's the kind of raw power that we don't really see in a lot of characters and really only reminds me of Broly. But with it being clear that Kaido doesn't align with the dragon, what about the man the fruit was originally intended for? Katakuri is a man who represents a lot of different ideas and ideals, but from the moment of his introduction in the manga, it's made extremely clear what kind of presence this character is supposed to have, which is one of complete seriousness. Between the few actions that we see at Katakuri's introduction, his extremely serious design, and his nature to take the protagonist seriously, Katakuri is a character that demands both your attention, but more than that, he demands your respect. This is largely because he's not like characters such as Doflamingo that kill and do as they please for their own gain or pleasure, but rather he's a character who acts solely under one role, the protector. As I'm sure many of you know, Katakuri got his signature scar across his mouth by opening his mouth too wide one day eating some food, permanently disfiguring how he looks. This in turn led local bullies to beat Katakuri's sister pretty severely, and in retaliation, in order to make sure that nothing like this ever happened to his family again, the monster that we know as Katakuri was born. In regards to the man himself, one of the biggest plot points surrounding Katakuri is the use and abilities of Future Sight, literally allowing him to see into the future for a few seconds, and while the Seiryu doesn't mention anything about seeing into the future, having the ability to see into the future could be considered good fortune, which is something associated with the Azure Dragon. Pulling our attention back to Brule, she actually has an interesting quote about Katakuri during the fight between him and Luffy that I think holds some relevance to the little theory that we have here. Saying, quote, "Brother Katakuri is not just undefeated, not once in his life has his back ever touched the ground. He's superhuman. Legend says he stood up on his own 2 feet the moment he was born and fell asleep sitting upright in his chair. He's never laid down in his life. He's a man who even looks down on the earth." Now, obviously, we find out later on that this is all a facade. Later on in the fight, Katakuri actually takes a break, lays down on his back, and enjoys a sweet treat, which, can't blame him, I do the same thing. But it's very interesting that Katakuri's presence while fighting Luffy, before he's known as the Sun God, has this almost mythical feel to it with not only his power, but his reverence that he has while looking down on the earth. If you were to look down on the earth, typically it's done so from the heavens, much like the Azure Dragon. Of course, this isn't a perfect one-to-one, as Katakuri really has no association with wood or water in any way, unless you count water needed to create mochi. But one final similarity that I see between Katakuri and the Seiryu is benevolence. During his fight with Luffy, Katakuri landed a decisive blow that not only was almost a mortal wound to Luffy, but definitely could have ended the fight right then and there, but only did so thanks to help from an outside source. And in response to this, instead of taking that decisive blow, which again would have been the best thing not only for his family, but for the Big Mom pirates in general, Katakuri instead decides to take a spear and stab himself, giving himself a near identical mortal wound to what Luffy has. Doing so showed respect and reverence for the warrior that Luffy is, and those are the types of actions that I would like to imagine embody the Azure Dragon's true nature. I feel it's pretty obvious what I'm getting ready to say, but before I do want to mention that there is one host that would embody the Azure Dragon properly, and that's Momonosuke. Already embodying his own version of the Azure Dragon, Momonosuke fits both thematically and symbolically, as he's not only a tender-hearted character that really wishes for nothing more than the prosperity and peace of his land and people, but also being the son of Odin really embellishes him with the pride of Wano on his back. And with the Seiryu in real life having strong associations to Japan, I feel the people of Wano would have felt very positively about the Azure Dragon, had it not terrorized them for so long. But Momonosuke aside, our focus falls back to Katakuri. Does Katakuri's nature align well enough with the Ua Ua no Mi that we could potentially see an awakening or even something past what Kaido was able to produce? I think yes. Partially. Putting aside how well both the Seiryu and Katakuri align in nature, Katakuri also seemed a bit more creative than Kaido in my opinion. Sure, Kaido had a few forms, even pseudo-forms that were transformations combined with certain techniques, such as the Flaming Dragon Torch, but Kaido always seemed to rely on the raw size and natural technique of the fruit in combination with Haki, and while powerful, never seemed the most creative to me. Meanwhile, Katakuri was able to fool the entire world, both in and out of the manga, by combining his Future Sight with his special Paramecia-type fruit, to make it appear as if he was a Logia type. And to say Katakuri isn't creative would be to say that Luffy isn't creative, because Katakuri's attacks were all just better versions of what Luffy had available to him at the time. As to what Katakuri would do differently than Kaido, I'm unsure. It's all speculation at this point, really. One thing I think he may take advantage of would be a partial fish transformation that maybe allows him to manipulate water or highly raises speed or endurance to be symbolic of the carp it's based on. Scales are also a big part of both fish and dragon lore typically, so maybe a gun-like ability that shoots off scales from various parts of the body. Ultimately, I'm not sure if Katakuri would be able to awaken the Ua Ua no Mi perfectly. I mean, we did mention before that their natures both align, but Katakuri does have some vengeance in him. Katakuri's story is ultimately one of vengeance and protection, much like Batman, and while protecting who and what you love is honorable, the methods to one's madness is still important, and killing men just for viewing your face while you eat because you feel shame on how you look doesn't really strike me as something the Azure Dragon would align with. At the end of the day, I think if Big Mom hadn't failed in giving the Ua Ua no Mi to Katakuri, she would have most definitely ended up with a more powerful son, but what about the ramifications that it has on the story? With no Mochi Man, who would have given such an iconic and honestly legendary fight that would have made the protagonist question everything about their abilities? What would Kaido have done had he not received this power way back when, and was there something that he originally had his eyes set on? Is there a perfect fruit for these two characters? I guess we'll just have to try to answer these questions and more in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, again, don't forget to hit that like button down below for me. Make sure you are subscribed, as it does make things a little bit easier for me, and I like to see big number go up. So thank you again so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know down in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time.